The Buffalo Bills wrapped up their 6th training camp practice on Tuesday, and defense was the story of the day. I am Josh McCarty from Bills Chat, and we're going to get into all of that right now. Ed Oliver stole the show on Tuesday. He was virtually unblockable no matter who he went up against. His biggest victim was Connor McGovern. At one point, Connor McGovern got taken off of the first team offensive line left guard position, replaced by David Edwards because he could not stand up to Ed Oliver. I would not read into this as Connor McGovern's job is in jeopardy. I think it's much more of a situation of, hey, today is not your day and we have to find a way to get through this drill. But we've seen this before with Ed Oliver. Sometimes in camp, he's unblockable. We would love to see it translate to some consistency in the regular season, but at least on this day, August 1st, it was Ed Oliver's world, and the rest of us were just living in it. As far as the offensive line goes, McGovern was certainly not the only one that struggled, as Deion Dawkins and Spencer Brown both had struggles in one-on-ones and team periods. It's too early to panic about the offensive line. I think this is just one of those situations where when it rains, it pours. It is the second day in pads. It is the 6th training camp practice. These are human beings. They could be a situation where they're getting bored. And quite honestly, the last few practices, the offense had been dominating. So maybe the defense came out with just a little more attitude here on a day before a day off, which sometimes people can be looking ahead to. So you never know what's going into it, but it's at least notable that Spencer Brown, who had been doing well up until this point, really struggled on Tuesday. And now this is 2 practices in a row for Deion Dawkins where it's less than ideal results. On the defensive line, there was an interesting development as Boogie Basham and AJ Epinesa both had time with the ones. And that's fascinating from the standpoint of, I think a lot of us were under the impression that maybe one of those guys may not even make the team. Maybe those guys are roster bubble. I think the odd man out at this point looks like Shaq Lawson. It doesn't sound like he has that same burst that we had become accustomed to in seasons past. He's obviously becoming a little bit older. I don't think there is a spot on this roster for Shane Ray, although I do think there's a chance he's a priority practice squad guy. But at least based on what we saw today, and in Boogie Basham's case, lining up at defensive tackle at times, along with Greg Rousseau, I would predict that Boogie Basham, AJ Epinesa both make this roster. And right now, it sure seems like maybe Shaq Lawson has a long way to go if he wants to be part of the 2023 Buffalo Bills. Jordan Poyer had a veteran rest day. Taylor Rapp took his spot. Taylor Rapp reportedly was very physical out there, and he's obviously considered to be a very good depth safety for the Bills. I think there's a chance that even if Poyer or Hyde are healthy all year, you'll see Rapp in some dime situations, maybe some big nickel situations, but at least for today, he was in that starting safety role. Speaking of safeties, Cam Lewis is having a very good training camp. He's a guy that I think a lot of people are sleeping on because we remember the Justin Jefferson play. Remember running into the punter against Miami that almost cost the Bills that game in December. But what people forget is Cam Lewis became a four-phase special teams player. He became a backup safety, and he is probably, if not definitely, the best backup slot cornerback on this team. If Taron Johnson goes down, I don't think you want Saran Neo playing extensive reps on this team. I think Cam Lewis is much closer to a roster lock than a roster bubble player. He still has to earn it. He still has to continue to play well. But when you talk about what depth players need to do to make the roster, he checks a lot of boxes as a guy that can help you in a lot of different ways. His running mate at safety, Damar Hamlin, had a pretty cool moment today. He had an interception, went back nearly for a touchdown before he was stopped by David Quessenberry. Obviously, it's training camp. There's some reports that maybe people thought the play was over, so they weren't chasing him down. But I am not going to pour water on this. A cool moment for Damar Hamlin to get an interception. Super happy for him in that regard. And then the last secondary update, obviously, is the starting cornerback opposite Tre'Davious White. More of the same today. The same 3 guys we've been talking about all camp. Dane Jackson, Kaiir Elam, Christian Benford, all rotating in. I still feel like maybe it's Dane Jackson's job to lose. Kaiir Elam has been doing better in the one-on-one drills. But what's interesting, Joe Biscaglia from The Athletic, who really has his finger on the pulse of this team, made a comment on his podcast today that he thinks Christian Benford is having the best camp of the 3 cornerbacks. And if he had to pick one to be in the lead for the starter right now, it would be Christian Benford. When Joe Biscaglia speaks about the Bills, I listen because some of it's his opinion, but he has a lot of sources in that organization. He's been right way more than he's been wrong. That makes me think maybe Christian Benford is way more in play for this job than some of us, including me, had given him credit for. Let's talk about the middle linebacker situation because we saw a diversion from the rotation as today was supposed to be Baylon Spector's day, but they went back to Tyrell Dodson. So what we've seen now is day 1, Tyrell Dodson. Day 2, Terrell Bernard. Day 3, Baylon Spector. Day 4, Tyrell Dodson. Day 5, Terrell Bernard. Day 6, not Baylon Spector. I wouldn't necessarily think that this means Baylon Spector's out of the competition. There was a line that came before yesterday of now pads are on, so it could be simply they have reset the rotation. I would think that it's somewhat likely that Baylon Spector runs with the ones on Thursday when the Bills are back on the field. If he doesn't, though, I think this is the first significant step in ruling out one of those 3 players. So Thursday is going to be a big practice for Baylon Spector and that middle linebacker situation. We had another Josh Allen scare today. I would love to not have to say that again for the rest of these training camp videos, but at least for Tuesday, I'm not going to be able to get that done. As Taron Johnson was coming on a blitz, got a little too close to Josh Allen, rubbed his leg a little close. I don't think it was anything serious, but Josh Allen limped off, got his foot looked at. Apparently he was just fine, came back in, didn't miss any time. But stop hitting Josh Allen. Stop, even if it's accidental, stop getting near Josh Allen. I don't want to keep talking about Josh Allen limping at practice, especially it's Taron Johnson 2 days in a row. It seems like both times it was kind of unfortunate, but the Bills have to figure out what's going on there because they got to stop playing around with that. Just take a look at what's going on in Cincinnati right now with Joe Burrow, and you will understand how important it is to keep 17 clean. On the offensive line, Osiris Torrance and Ryan Bates continue to rotate. Still don't really have a strong feel for who's going to win that job. It seems like maybe Ryan Bates is playing just a smidge better, but Osiris Torrance seems like he's getting a little bit more snaps. Ryan Bates is also working in more at center when Mitch Morse needs a blow. It sure seems like Ryan Bates has been identified as that guy that's going to back up Mitch Morse if Mitch Morse ever has to miss time. But for now, I think we're still kind of in a holding pattern, and we may not have a good feel for this right guard situation until the preseason games begin. One last position I want to talk about is wide receiver and Khalil Shakir, because I think if the Bills had their way, Khalil Shakir would be the 3rd wide receiver on this team. It sure felt like they were trying to do everything they could to set him up to win that job this summer. And from the reports you're reading, he's been okay. But there's been some inconsistent drops, which happened again on Tuesday. And the issue there is when you have Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis and Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox and James Cook and Josh Allen, you don't need the wide receiver 3 to be a hero, but you need him to do the little things well. And right now, Shakir, for whatever reason, is just struggling with the things he's supposed to be very good at, which is quite simply catching the balls that are thrown to him. I think he has left the door wide open for someone like a Trent Sherfield or Deontay Hardy to come in and take that role. I would predict at this point in time that maybe the first 3rd wide receiver off the bench is Khalil Shakir week 1. I do think that's going to be somewhat of a committee approach depending on the matchups. And I obviously think Dalton Kincaid is going to be very involved as this team is looking like they're going to go a little bit more toward 12 personnel. But I would say that for those of us that were hoping that Khalil Shakir was going to take this big leap and become a very reliable weapon for the Bills, doesn't sound like he's there yet. Still plenty of time to go. They haven't even played the red and blue scrimmage yet. They have 3 preseason games left. There's still plenty of time for Khalil Shakir to turn this thing around. But for right now, I'd say it's been a little bit disappointing for the 2nd-year wide receiver. And last, we have some injuries to update. Tim Settle did miss today with a groin injury. Talked about yesterday how he left practice early. Don't want to read too much into it. We didn't hear from Sean McDermott on injuries today. McDermott was actually away on a family matter, was expected to be back later on Tuesday. I would just say that any injury right now, especially to a player who is supposed to help the Bills like Tim Settle is, if you are anything less than 100%, they're going to err on the side of caution on August 1st. That could be exactly what's going on here. No reason to panic on Tim Settle. Other injuries going on with the Bills. Wide receiver Isaiah Coulter has a knee injury. Wide receiver Brian Thompson had a concussion. Cornerback Kyron Brown has a groin injury. None of those guys practiced on Tuesday. The Bills have a day off on Wednesday. They are back on the field on Thursday morning at 9:45. Keep it locked right here to Bills Chat. We will keep you up to date on all things happening at Buffalo Bills training camp. I would appreciate it so much if you took the time to like and subscribe to our channel. We are trying so hard to make this your one-stop shop for all Buffalo Bills content, and those likes and subscribes help us out so much in the algorithm. We would really appreciate it. I will talk to you next time on Quick Chat.